Okay, so now we've kind of shifted into, after the election and everything, and we have obviously somebody that is in power now, President Trump, and he is obviously very, in some regards, pro-Israel. I know there's a lot
Mhm.
going on with the two-state solution talk right
Mhm.
now, but he has a lot of people that are in his administration as well that seem to be very supportive of the Jews wanting to be able to rebuild their temple too. So, what do you think? The Trump administration, the role, how do you think this role might come into play in advancing the third temple?
Yeah, so let's give a little background to that
Yeah,
because
sure.
we have Hegseth in there as defense. He's very strong. He's been on record talking about how he's all for building a third temple. Mike Huckabee, no doubt, same thing. Very pro-Israel, very again Christian prophecy, if you want to say that. Let's fast forward a year ago, or fast backwards, I guess, a year ago, where the ceremony, the red heifer ceremony, was supposed to happen in the Passover to Pentecost window of 2024, basically April to June. Well, at that time, Israel had been in its war with Hamas from October 7th. And so, in addition, the Biden administration not friendly to Israel, very much so. And so, in January of let me just set the context. So Israel, Netanyahu, I think, is the right person for the job for sure. He recognizes, and he always has, the existential threat of being surrounded by either Hezbollah or Hamas. And so he said very clearly that there is no future for Hamas in the Gaza Strip. So as he's doing this, he's fighting against the American administration at the time, the Biden administration, who, for whatever reason, it's just sick. They wanted to see Hamas continue to be in power. Why that is, I don't know. If it does it go back to Obama? Probably. Okay. But nevertheless, so what Netanyahu is he's recognizing we need weapons from the
Mhm.
United States. And therefore, he's trying to do that political navigation in trying not to upset Biden in order to, which would then, as he showed, which would prohibit or either limit or restrain weapons from being delivered to Israel, which they've already paid for and are entitled to through agreements. And so, but you have the religious component of the government. The religious government in Israel right now, the government is the most religious in the history of Israel in 78 years. Okay, but so here's Netanyahu walking this. He's got his religious component that is trying to press for greater sovereignty on the Temple Mount, and Netanyahu's looking like, hey, I know that's important, but we just need to survive. We have an existential threat. Again, as we know, in April and October, Iran has launched rockets. So you have all this backdrop. And then what happened, the reason this came out even more was, of course, October 7th of 23 is when the terrorist attack took place. Prior to this, there was zero mention ever by Hamas of the red heifers. Zero. But come January of 24, they made a public statement that one of the reasons that they attacked in October was because of the red cows. They mentioned them specifically.
I know, I saw it. I shared it everywhere.
So here we have this now very specific mention. And now Netanyahu's like, okay. So in my interviews with Byron at the time, prior to that announcement, Byron's like, hey, Mondo, roughly November, December of 23, we got permission. We're planning on the ceremony taking place in April of 24. Pray for me. We're trying to do a live stream for 800 million people. And so I'm like, oh, wow. So you had all this thought and that momentum, that discussion was happening from July of 23. So even before the terrorist attack. Okay. So fast forward again there to November, December. And then in January, Hamas comes out with this. And then talking to Byron, he's like, Mondo,
it's halted.
Squashed.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Can't talk about it. Can't make it public. And so you see the Temple Institute publicly now reshaping the conversation to say, oh, no, everything's on hold. Or, we want to do it this is a joyous event. There's nothing going to be secret here. And so a lot of people ask if it's been done in secret. It's impossible for it to be done in secret because when you're on the Mount of Olives, you have two locations that are potentials. The Mount of Olives is surrounded by Jewish settlements and or Jewish cities, and as well as Palestinian cities. So if you have a bonfire, I mean, think about having a bonfire in the middle of town. You can't hide that.
No, smoke's going to be big.
Smoke. I mean, it's going to be the police are going to be called, the fire department's going to be called. So you at least have public, and then of course being surrounded by Palestinians, they know that has to happen on the Mount of Olives. So it cannot be done in secret. So everything got squashed. So all that being said, that status quo maintained all the way through the end until January 20th, just a few weeks ago.
Wow.
Because they know, well, Biden's out now, Trump is in. So with Trump already providing weapons and releasing all the ones that they paid for, what I believe is happening is you still have the ceasefire with Lebanon, and you have the negotiations and the releases of hostages with Hamas. So over the next few months, as that situation potentially settles, the security situation is going to settle. So it doesn't need to happen at Passover. That was just something that was suggested. But any of the feasts of Israel throughout the year is when they prefer to have it, because there's a lot of interest in what's happening in the festivals. And so they're thinking, well, wouldn't it be great in one of the major festivals, whether that's Passover or Pentecost or even the fall feasts of Rosh Hashanah, Tabernacles, Central Feast of Weeks, whatever. Just having the
do you feel like it'd be more beneficial for them to have it, like they kind of, not that they have to, but they would want to? Is that what you're kind of driving at?
Yes, that they have said that they want to coincide it with other festivals so that the excitement is there and there's an interest in them, and let's do the ceremony. So with Trump now in, the rabbis, man, their mood has shifted. They are living on cloud 9 and believing that this could be the year. Let me just say this, that the other risk is, most people talk about, is the longer they wait, the longer there's a potential for of the 3 remaining red heifers to become disqualified. So there's no upper age limit, but simply just getting older.
Okay.
Getting gray hair, as things happen when you get older. So these animals potentially could be modified. So it is in their best interest to do it sooner rather than later. But they have shifted to say, we want all of the rabbis to buy in, which the rabbis currently fight amongst each other, just like the Pharisees and the Sadducees did in the first century.
Nothing's changed.
Nothing's changed. They have factions. And so what they want is, if they do the ceremony, they want it to be accepted by the other factions. Will that be the case? So they're trying to build a consensus on this. Who knows how far that is happening and when it will. But nevertheless, now that Trump's in, we have a 4-year window, so to speak, of high anticipation.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say so. And then I remember you saying this too, that I've seen you mention this in a couple of different interviews, that Benjamin Netanyahu almost feels like he's like divinely called to see the temple rebuilt. Hopefully I didn't make that too extreme with the wording, but I feel like I've heard you say something to that degree, that he feels very called to be a part of getting this done.
Yes, I have that from a firsthand source, from Robert Mawiri, who was involved in the finding of the red heifers. And he's a well-known person. He's been recognized by Israel for his contributions, one of the top 50, whatever. And he said, Mondo, I'm on a first name basis with Netanyahu. And I said, well, can I share this publicly? He goes, yeah. He goes, Netanyahu told me privately, between him and I mean, obviously it's public information now, but that he said, Robert, I feel that God has called me to be the prime minister who helps rebuild the third temple. Now, I don't know people's hearts. I don't know what the motive is. Is he being truthful? Is he being a politician? I don't know. Nevertheless, Robert said it hit to his ears. This is what Netanyahu told him. So to me, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's fact in the sense of God's perspective, but at least he has spoken that he feels to be led in that direction.